What if the next sentence you speak, not the next year, not the next degree, not the next job title, completely rewires how the world sees you? Right now, someone with half your intelligence is getting the promotion you deserve. Someone with a fraction of your experience is closing deals you've been chasing for months. Someone who walked into the room after you did is already running it. And the difference isn't IQ, it isn't luck, it isn't their LinkedIn profile. It's one skill, a skill so precise, so learnable, so devastatingly effective that the moment you master it, you will never again stand in a room feeling invisible. That skill is strategic communication. And by the time this audiobook ends, you will think faster, speak sharper, and command every conversation you walk into like a surgeon commands an operating room. Not by being the loudest, not by memorizing clever comebacks, but by training the exact mental muscles that turn ordinary words into extraordinary influence. The question isn't whether you can learn this. The question is, how much longer can you afford not to? The split-second edge. How top communicators process reality faster than everyone else. Here's something that will change how you see every conversation you've ever had. Communication isn't about speaking. It's about processing. Before your mouth opens, your brain is already running 1,000 calculations, scanning social dynamics, predicting reactions, measuring power, reading microsignals most people never consciously notice. The gap between someone who stumbles awkwardly through conversations and someone who owns the room isn't confidence or charisma. It's processing speed. Your brain receives over 11 million bits of information every single second. Yet the average person consciously engages with only about 40 of those bits. 40 out of 11 million. That means you're currently walking through the richest data environment imaginable, a live human interaction. And capturing less than 0.0004% of the available intelligence, elite communicators have trained themselves to capture exponentially more, and that's what I call the split-second edge. Layer 1, contextual awareness. Average communicators listen to words. Masters listen to worlds. While most people wait for their turn to talk, elite communicators are simultaneously reading body language, vocal shifts, micro-expressions, room dynamics, unspoken power structures, and hidden motivations. They're constantly asking, what does this person actually want? What are they afraid to say? Who are they trying to impress right now? This requires training your brain to operate on 3 channels at once, what I call the triple-layer listening system. Layer 1, the literal words being spoken. Layer 2, the emotional undercurrent beneath those words. Layer 3, the strategic objective driving the entire conversation. Most people never leave Layer 1. The moment you start operating on all 3 simultaneously, you gain intelligence others don't even know is available. Layer 2, pattern recognition. Elite communicators have built an internal encyclopedia of human behavioral patterns. When someone speaks, they instantly categorize that person's style, predict their responses, and calibrate their approach in real time. They recognize the approval seeker, who needs to feel important before they'll agree to anything. The data-first analyst, who shuts down emotionally and opens up logically. The relationship processor, who must feel heard before they hear you. The results driver, who wants the bottom line before you've finished your first sentence. Build your own pattern library by studying the people around you like a behavioral scientist. Notice what happens when you lead with facts versus feelings. Watch how different personalities respond to directness versus warmth. The more patterns you can recognize instantly, the more precisely you can tailor every word you say. Layer 3, predictive processing. Here's the secret that separates good communicators from great ones. Masters don't react. They anticipate. They're 3 moves ahead, already positioning their next statement before the current one lands. They think like chess players, not reacting to what just happened, but engineering what happens next. Before any significant conversation, run mental simulations. What objections will arise? What emotional flashpoints might ignite? What direction might this go sideways? And how will you steer it back? When you've already played the game in your head, you don't think fast. You think ahead. And to everyone else in the room, that looks like genius. Layer 4. Emotional processing without emotional hijacking. Here's where most people lose, not because they lack intelligence, but because they let feeling override thinking at the exact moment precision matters most. Elite communicators have developed what I call emotional overhead, the ability to feel the emotional current in a room without being swept away by it. They recognize when someone is deliberately trying to trigger them. They notice when emotions are being weaponized, and they choose, consciously, how to respond rather than react. The tool that makes this possible is emotional granularity, the practice of naming emotions with precision rather than lumping everything into frustrated or anxious. Are you feeling dismissed, disrespected, or simply misunderstood? Is the other person genuinely angry, or are they performing anger to gain leverage? The more precisely you can diagnose the emotional landscape, the more surgically you can navigate it. Layer 5. Response. Flexibility. The most dangerous communicator in any room isn't the loudest, it's the most adaptable. While average communicators have 1 or 2 modes, aggressive or passive, logical or emotional, masters have an entire arsenal. They can shift from authoritative to collaborative in a single sentence. They can move from analytical to deeply personal and back again within the same conversation based on what the moment demands. This isn't being fake, it's being fluent. A skilled pilot doesn't fly every approach the same way, regardless of weather. A skilled communicator doesn't run every conversation through the same script, regardless of who's in the room. Develop your flexibility by consciously practicing different modes in low-stakes situations. Lead with data in one meeting, lead with empathy in the next. Build the full range, and then train yourself to select the right gear automatically, in real time, based on what you're reading in the room. When all 5 layers activate simultaneously, something remarkable happens. You stop surviving conversations and start architecting them. The influence blueprint, 7 psychological triggers that work before you say a word. Every human being on Earth is running on the same basic psychological operating system. The hardware changes, different personalities, different backgrounds, different fears, but the software is remarkably consistent. Elite communicators don't try to override that software. They learn to work with it. Here are the 7 deepest triggers in human psychology, and how to activate them with surgical precision. Trigger 1. Reciprocity, the invisible debt that never expires. The human brain is hardwired with a simple, powerful drive. Return what you receive. Not because people are obligated, but because the psychological discomfort of an unreturned favor is genuinely uncomfortable. Elite communicators understand that reciprocity is most powerful when it's unexpected, and when there's a natural delay between the giving and the asking. Most people get this wrong. They give something, then immediately extend their hand for something back. That's not reciprocity, that's a transaction, and people feel it. Instead, become someone who adds value without agenda, share information, make introductions, offer genuine, specific acknowledgement of others' work. Give your full, undivided attention when most people are half listening. Plant these seeds consistently, and when the moment comes that you need something, support, a decision, a favor, The psychological pull toward helping you will already be alive in their subconscious. Trigger 2. Social proof. Borrowed certainty. In moments of uncertainty, people don't look inward. They look sideways at what others like them are already doing. The key phrase is, others like them. Generic testimonials bounce off skeptical minds like water off glass. But a story about someone who shares their fears, their situation, their identity, that story lands. It bypasses rational defense and speaks directly to the part of the brain that just wants permission to believe. So, when you're trying to move someone toward a decision, don't tell them what to do. Show them someone they respect who already did it and walked away better for it. Trigger 3. Commitment and consistency. The lock-in effect. Once a person takes a position, their brain works over time to remain consistent with that position. This isn't weakness. It's a feature of a mind that takes its own word seriously. Elite communicators use this by asking questions that lead people to articulate positions they already hold, positions that align with the direction you want them to move. You're not changing their mind, you're revealing it to them, and once they've said it out loud, the consistency drive does the rest. Don't push, lead, ask, listen, and let the lock-in effect work quietly in the background. Trigger 4. Authority, competence, is the new charisma. People don't automatically defer to loud, they defer to certain. Authority isn't a title on a business card. It's the accumulated weight of demonstrated competence, communicated through specific language, confident delivery, and precision over generality. Here's the shift. Instead of saying, "I think maybe you should consider," say, "The most effective path forward is." Instead of hedging with, "I'm not totally sure," but anchor with, "Based on what I've seen work consistently." These aren't tricks, they're signals, and the human brain reads those signals in milliseconds, making rapid judgments about whether to listen or dismiss. Be so deeply prepared that your certainty becomes genuine. Then let your language broadcast that certainty without apology. Trigger 5. Scarcity. Real urgency versus manufactured pressure. The oldest sales tactic in the world is limited time offer, and everyone sees through it. But authentic scarcity, the kind that's actually true, is one of the most powerful forces in human decision-making. Time is always limited. Attention is always finite. Opportunities have natural windows that close. Instead of manufacturing urgency, reveal it. Help people see the real cost of their indecision. What compounds while they wait? What advantage shifts to someone else while they deliberate? When urgency is genuine, it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like clarity. Trigger 6. Liking, the connection that unlocks everything. People say yes to people they like. But liking isn't about being agreeable or performing warmth. Research shows we like people who are similar to us, who notice us genuinely, and who we believe are on our side. The fastest way to be liked isn't to be impressive. It's to be curious. Ask real questions, remember details, find authentic points of connection, not manufactured rapport, but actual shared ground. Position yourself not as someone trying to win, but as someone trying to solve together. That shift from opponent to ally changes everything. Trigger 7. Loss aversion, the fear that moves mountains. People fear loss roughly twice as much as they value equivalent gain. This is one of the most replicated findings in behavioral psychology, and one of the most consistently underused in communication. Don't just paint the upside. Help people feel what they're currently losing by staying still. What's eroding? What's compounding in the wrong direction? What advantage are their competitors gaining while they wait? This isn't fear-mongering, It's helping people see the full picture of their current trajectory. Once they see it, action stops being a choice and becomes a necessity. Strategic listening. Why the most powerful weapon in any conversation is your silence. The world rewards talkers. History remembers listeners. Here's the paradox that most people never discover. The most persuasive communicators in the world aren't the ones who speak most brilliantly. They're the ones who listen most strategically. While everyone else in the room is preparing their next sentence, masters are mining, extracting intelligence, mapping motivations, identifying pressure points, and positioning themselves for maximum impact when they finally do speak. Every conversation, when you approach it this way, becomes an intelligence operation. Level 1. Emotional archaeology. Surface words are almost never the real message. When someone complains about their manager, they're not just venting. They're revealing their relationship with authority, their need for recognition, their fear of being overlooked. When someone discusses a business challenge, they're not just sharing information. They're exposing their priorities, their resource anxieties, and the hidden criteria by which they make decisions. Train yourself to listen beneath the words. Listen for what I call emotional markers. The moments when someone's voice speeds up or slows down, rises or falls, hesitates or floods. What topics make them lean forward? What subjects make them suddenly go careful? These signals are maps to the emotional terrain that actually drives their decisions. Level 2. Value archaeology. Everyone has a hierarchy of values that quietly governs every decision they make. But most people have never consciously articulated these values, even to themselves. Strategic listeners uncover these hierarchies by listening for language patterns that reveal what people prioritize and what they protect. What outcomes do they describe as ideal? What situations do they describe as unbearable? What do they complain about most consistently? And what do they brag about when no one is judging? The things people complain about reveal their unmet values. The things they celebrate reveal their satisfied ones. Map their value hierarchy, and you can predict their next decision before they make it. Level 3. Authority mapping. In any conversation, there's a visible power structure. And then there's the real one. Who does this person need approval from before they can act? Whose voice carries the most weight in their internal deliberation? What groups do they identify with so strongly that disagreeing with them would feel like self-betrayal? Listen for who they quote, what sources they invoke, what groups they claim membership in. These aren't just conversational details, they're the keys to understanding whose approval matters most, and how to align your argument with the authorities they already trust. Level 4. The excavation sequence. Most people ask obvious questions and get defensive answers. Strategic listeners use a specific questioning sequence that feels like natural conversation while systematically extracting the exact intelligence they need. Start broad. What's your read on how this is going? Then narrow. What's been the most frustrating part of that? Then go emotional. How does that affect you personally? Then extract values. What would a genuinely good outcome look like for you? This sequence doesn't feel like interrogation. It feels like someone who actually cares, and the information it reveals is worth more than anything you could say. Level 5. Mirroring as a strategic tool. People open up to people who feel familiar, not because of what you say, but because of how you say it. When you subtly match someone's communication style, their pace, their energy, their level of detail, their vocabulary, something shifts in their nervous system. The subconscious signal is, this person is like me, this person is safe, and people are dramatically more honest, more open, and more persuadable with people who feel safe. This isn't mimicry, it's attunement. and it's one of the most powerful rapport-building tools available. Level 6, strategic silence. Here's a move almost no one uses, and everyone should. After someone finishes speaking, wait. Just wait. Count 3 full seconds before you respond. In that silence, something almost magical happens. The other person almost always fills it, with additional information, with a revealing admission, with a position they hadn't planned to share. Most people are so uncomfortable with silence that they'll talk themselves into corners just to fill the void. Learn to be comfortable in the pause. The person who can sit comfortably in silence while the other person scrambles to fill it holds enormous leverage. In negotiations, in conflict, in persuasion. Level 7. Listening for what's not said. The most revealing parts of any conversation are the omissions. What obvious question isn't being asked? What natural concern isn't being raised? What detail is being carefully stepped around? People rarely lie outright, but they constantly manage information, emphasizing some things, burying others, skipping entire categories of reality when it suits their agenda. Develop an ear for the gaps. When a story lacks specific details, when someone answers a question you didn't quite ask, when they're more comfortable talking about what happened than about how they felt about it. These gaps are windows into the parts of the truth they haven't decided to share yet. Strategic listening doesn't just make you better informed, it makes you irreplaceable. Because in a world where everyone is waiting to talk, the person who actually listens is the rarest and most valued presence in any room. Confidence architecture. How to project unshakable authority. Through voice, body, and words. Let's kill a myth right now. Confidence is not a feeling, it's a performance. And the best performers have mastered the external signals so thoroughly that the internal state becomes almost irrelevant. You don't need to feel fearless to project certainty. You don't need zero doubt to communicate authority. You need to understand the specific behavioral signals that trigger confidence responses in other people's brains, and then deploy those signals with intention. This is not fake, it's strategic, and there's a profound difference. The voice, your first and most powerful instrument. Before your content matters, your delivery has already made its case. Most people undermine themselves with vocal patterns they've never examined. They rush when nervous, which signals anxiety. They end declarative statements with a rising inflection, which signals uncertainty. They fill thinking pauses with like, and you know, which signals that they haven't fully formed the thought they're about to share. Here's the recalibration. Lower your pitch slightly at the end of statements. This creates what researchers call authoritative intonation, the vocal fingerprint of someone who's certain. Slow your pace by approximately 15%. Slower speakers force listeners to pay attention. Faster speakers sound defensive. And when you need a moment to think, pause silently. A deliberate pause signals that your next thought is worth waiting for. A nervous filler signals that you're not sure what comes next. The words, surgical precision over verbal volume. Confident communicators aren't necessarily eloquent. They're specific. They quantify. They use active voice. They make declarative statements. They don't think maybe. They know. They don't try to. They will. They don't ask if something makes sense. They invite specific feedback. Compare these. I think maybe we should sort of consider possibly restructuring the approach versus the most effective path forward is restructuring the approach. Here's why. Same information, completely different psychological impact. The second version signals competence, preparation, and leadership before the content has even been evaluated. The body, your presence. Before you speak, your physical presence establishes your authority before a word leaves your mouth. And most people are unwittingly surrendering that authority through posture, eye contact, and spatial habits they've never examined. Stand or sit with your chest open and shoulders back, not aggressively, but expansively. Take up appropriate space. Maintain eye contact that communicates engagement, not dominance. Look away occasionally, but always return. Use gestures that are purposeful and grounded, not restless or self-soothing. When you walk into a room, move with intention. The brain reads purposeful movement as belonging and belonging as authority. Strategic vulnerability, the paradox of strength. Here's where most confidence coaching gets it wrong. Projecting invulnerability doesn't build trust, it erodes it. People don't trust perfection, they trust honesty. And the most credible thing you can do is acknowledge your limitations before someone else exposes them, with confidence, not apology. I don't have that data in front of me, but I'll find it and get back to you today. That's outside my primary expertise, but here's the relevant framework I'd apply. These statements don't diminish you, they humanize you, and humanization is the foundation of trust. Strategic vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the highest form of self-awareness. Preparation, the only source of authentic confidence. You cannot sustain performed confidence in a domain where you're genuinely unprepared. Eventually, the facade cracks, and when it does, the credibility damage is severe. Real confidence is rooted in real competence, and real competence comes from preparation so thorough that when the unexpected happens, your brain already has a response framework ready. Before any high-stakes conversation, don't just prepare your content. Prepare your responses. Anticipate the 3 hardest challenges to your position. Practice your responses until they're fluid, not rehearsed. Research the person you're speaking with so you can speak to their specific interests, not a generic audience. The more thoroughly you've prepared, the more genuine your confidence becomes, because you're not performing certainty. You have it. High-stakes communication, the system that keeps you sharp when everything is on the line. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can master every technique in this book and still collapse when the stakes get high enough. Because high-stakes communication isn't just a harder version of normal conversation. It's a fundamentally different psychological environment, and it demands a fundamentally different on-system. When consequences are significant, people become more defensive, more emotional, and far more likely to misinterpret even well-intentioned words. Information becomes politically charged. Silence gets filled with assumption. Every word carries weight you didn't know it was carrying. The communicators who thrive in these moments don't just have better skills, they have better systems. System 1. Pressure inoculation. The physiological response to high-stakes pressure, the racing heart, the tunnel vision, the urge to speak too fast or go silent, isn't weakness. It's a nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do. The solution isn't to eliminate that response. It's to train through it. Before any high-stakes situation, mentally rehearse the hardest version of what might happen. Visualize not the best case, but the most challenging case, and see yourself navigating it with composure. When you've already experienced the worst-case scenario in your mind, your nervous system treats the real version as familiar rather than threatening. Your response to pressure becomes calibrated, not panicked. System 2. The PrEP framework. Under fire. When you're in the middle of a high-pressure exchange and need to construct a compelling response fast, you don't have time for perfect. You need a framework that's fast, reliable, and persuasive under any conditions. Use PrEP. Position. State your stance clearly in one sentence. Reason. Give your single strongest reason. Example. Provide one specific concrete illustration. Payoff. State the outcome or consequence of following your recommendation. This structure works in 30 seconds or 30 minutes. It ensures your response is logical, credible, and memorable, even when you're constructing it under fire. System 3. Reading the room. In group settings. High-stakes situations almost always involve multiple stakeholders, each with different agendas, different fears, and different levels of actual decision-making authority. Before you speak, quickly map the room. Who holds the real power in this decision? Who influences the decision-maker's thinking? Who might feel threatened by your position? And how can you neutralize that threat preemptively? Who are your potential allies? Don't target your message at the entire room equally. Tailor it to the decision-maker while acknowledging the concerns of those who influence them. This builds coalitions instead of resistance. System 4. Graduated information management. In high-pressure situations, information is a strategic resource. Revealing too much too soon hands your opponents the material they need to challenge you. Revealing too little damages your credibility. Lead with your strongest, most defensible points. Watch the reaction. Then decide how much more to reveal. Keep your best evidence in reserve. Deploy it only when you meet strong opposition. This isn't dishonesty, it's sequencing. And sequencing determines whether you control the narrative or respond to someone else's. System 5. Handling aggression. Without capitulating or escalating. When someone becomes hostile, most people do one of two things. They fight back, which escalates, or they back down, which signals weakness. Neither serves your objectives. Use the acknowledge, redirect, refocus technique. 1. Acknowledge their concern without accepting blame. I understand this situation feels frustrating. 2. Redirect from emotion to substance. Let's look at the specific factors at play here. 3. Refocus on shared objectives. We both want this to resolve effectively. Here's how I think we get there. This approach diffuses aggression without appearing defensive. It signals emotional maturity, strategic thinking, and, crucially, that you cannot be rattled. System 6. Extracting commitments under pressure. High-stakes communication almost always culminates in the moment of commitment, and under pressure, people hedge, delay, and qualify instead of deciding. Use the assumption close. Instead of asking if they'll move forward, assume they will, and discuss the how. When we implement this, what level of support will you need from your team? This framing makes non-commitment feel awkward. It places the default psychological position at yes rather than maybe, and it gives people an easy, comfortable way to confirm without feeling pressured. System 7. The strategic follow-up. High-stakes communication rarely ends when the room clears. The real work often happens in the 24 hours that follow. When fence-sitters are reconsidering, when concerns that weren't raised publicly are quietly festering, and when decisions are still being made, contact key stakeholders individually within 24 hours, clarify ambiguities, address concerns that people were unwilling to voice in the group, provide additional evidence for your strongest points. This individual attention is where most high-stakes victories are either consolidated or quietly lost. Negotiation mastery, getting exactly what you want while making them feel they won. Most people enter negotiations the wrong way, as combatants fighting over a fixed pie. Elite negotiators enter differently. They come in as architects, designing outcomes where their victory looks, to the other side, like a victory too. This isn't deception. It's the highest form of strategic intelligence. The best negotiation you'll ever have is one where the other person walks away feeling good, and you walk away having gotten exactly what you planned from the beginning. Principle 1. Information asymmetry. The person who knows more wins, not more loudly, not more aggressively, more strategically. Before any negotiation begins, gather intelligence through conversations that don't feel like intelligence gathering. Ask about their broader challenges, their timelines, their internal approval structures, their definition of success. Listen for what they're trying to avoid as much as what they're trying to achieve. Their constraints are your leverage. Their timelines are your timing. Their fears are your framing opportunities. Know their situation better than they expect you to, and you'll always be operating with superior information. Principle 2. The anchoring advantage. The first number in any negotiation creates a gravitational field that pulls all subsequent discussion toward it. This is not opinion. It's behavioral science, replicated across thousands of negotiation studies. Most people either anchor too aggressively and trigger defensive shutdown, or too conservatively and leave enormous value unclaimed. Elite negotiators anchor with precision, at their research-based extreme position, immediately justified with specific, credible rationale. Don't just throw out a number. Build the case for why that number is reasonable. Present market context, comparable precedents, value creation evidence. This moves their psychological anchor point while maintaining your credibility as a serious, prepared counterpart. Principle 3. The art of the reluctant concession. Every concession you make should feel hard-won, even if it costs you almost nothing. When you give something easily, you signal that you had more room all along. When you give something with visible hesitation and conditional attachment, you signal that you've genuinely moved, and you create psychological reciprocity pressure for them to move in return. The format: I wouldn't normally be flexible on this, but given your situation and the relationship we're building, I can make this work, provided we can finalize the timeline by Thursday. Every concession should be conditional. Every concession should cost you visibly, even when it doesn't cost you financially. Principle 4. Multiply the variables. Binary negotiations, where there's only one thing on the table, always become zero-sum. Someone wins on that variable, and someone loses. Elite negotiators expand the landscape. They introduce timing, payment structure, scope variations, service levels, exclusivity arrangements, future commitments, referral agreements, guarantees. The more variables in play, the more opportunities to find asymmetries, places where what costs you little is worth a great deal to them, and vice versa. These asymmetries are where mutual value is created, and mutual value is the foundation of agreements that both parties actually honor. Principle 5. Objection as intelligence. When someone raises an objection, most negotiators treat it as resistance to overcome. Elite negotiators treat it as information to mine. An objection tells you what matters most to the other person. And what matters most is your key to crafting the most compelling possible response. Use the validate, isolate, reframe method. 1. Validate. That's a legitimate concern and worth taking seriously. 2. Isolate. If we address the timing issue, specifically, are there other concerns we should also work through? 3. Reframe. The reason the timeline is structured this way is precisely because we prioritize quality delivery, which is what our clients consistently cite as the reason they chose us. This sequence acknowledges their reality, focuses the conversation, and repositions your position as the solution to their concern rather than the source of it. Advanced people. Reading. Decoding what people mean before they know they've said it. Every human being is constantly broadcasting their inner reality through their face, their voice, their body, their word choices, their silences. Most people walk through this constant stream of signal and catch almost none of it. Elite communicators read people the way experienced pilots read instruments, not waiting for the alarm, but noticing the subtle shifts that precede it. This isn't a mystical gift. It's a trained skill, and it starts with understanding that people are terrible at hiding what they actually think and feel. Skill 1. Establishing a baseline. You cannot read a deviation without first understanding the norm. Before you can notice that someone is more nervous than usual, you have to know how they behave when they're not nervous. Before you can catch the moment a topic makes someone suddenly careful, you have to know how they naturally speak when they're comfortable. Spend the first few minutes of any significant interaction in baseline calibration mode. Observe their natural pace of speech, their default eye contact pattern, their comfortable gesture style, their physical ease with neutral topics. This becomes your reference point. Every deviation from that baseline is a potential signal worth examining. Skill 2. Micro-expression recognition. The face tells the truth for fractions of a second before the social mask reasserts itself. These micro-expressions, involuntary flickers of genuine emotion lasting as little as 1/25th of a second, leak the real internal state before conscious control can catch them. The 7 universal expressions are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and contempt. They appear on every human face, across every culture, regardless of communication style or personality. Train yourself to look for the first response, the instant before the composed expression takes over. If someone says, "That sounds fantastic," while their face flashes a micro-expression of concern, you're seeing their actual reaction. That's the data that matters. Skill 3. Vocal pattern analysis. The words people choose tell you what they're thinking. The way they deliver those words tells you how they feel about what they're thinking. Listen for pace changes, topics that make someone speak faster, excitement or anxiety, versus slower, careful deliberation or reluctance. Listen for pitch shifts. Higher pitch often signals stress or uncertainty. Listen for volume changes. Dropping volume on key statements can signal discomfort or disclosure. Listen for vocal quality, the slight breathiness or tension that signals emotional engagement beneath a controlled surface. Someone can say, "I'm completely confident about this," while their voice rises slightly and their pace accelerates. The words say confidence, the voice says doubt. The voice is the more reliable witness. Skill 4. Body language clusters. Individual gestures are easily misread, but clusters, multiple simultaneous signals pointing in the same direction, are highly reliable indicators of internal state. Defensiveness rarely shows up as crossed arms alone. It shows up as crossed arms plus slight backward lean, plus reduced eye contact, plus tight lip compression. Multiple signals reinforcing each other. Genuine interest shows up as forward lean plus open gestures plus increased eye contact plus animated facial expression. The rule: don't interpret a single signal. Wait for the cluster. The more signals that align, the more confident you can be in your interpretation. Skill 5. Linguistic pattern analysis. The words people choose reveal how they think, what they prioritize, and what they're trying to avoid. Do they use primarily visual language? "I see what you're saying," "the picture isn't clear," or auditory, "that rings true, I hear you," or kinesthetic, "I feel like this doesn't sit right"? These preferences reveal processing styles, and they give you a template for how to speak so that your message feels natural to them, not foreign. Listen for absolute versus qualified language. This will work versus this might work, depending on. The former signals genuine confidence or deliberate persuasion. The latter signals uncertainty or strategic hedging. Notice which mode someone defaults to, and you'll know how to calibrate how much they actually believe what they're saying. Skill 6. Group power mapping. In group settings, formal titles are often decorative. The real power lives in the patterns of interaction. Watch who speaks first. Watch who others glance at before they commit to a position. Watch whose ideas get built upon and whose get quietly ignored. Watch who can interrupt without consequences and who cannot. Watch the physical positioning, who sits nearest the decision-maker, who sits facing the door, who sits at the head of the table even when they shouldn't. These patterns reveal the actual decision-making architecture of the group, which is usually quite different from the organizational chart. Align your pitch with the real power structure, not the nominal one. Conflict resolution mastery. Turning opposition into your greatest competitive advantage. Most people treat conflict like a storm to be survived. Elite communicators treat it like a diagnosis. Because conflict is information, it reveals the hidden tensions, the unmet needs, the misaligned expectations that were quietly building beneath the surface of every polite interaction. When conflict erupts, it's not a failure of the relationship. It's the relationship surfacing its own truth. Masters don't just resolve conflicts, they transform them into deeper understanding, stronger agreements, and relationships that are more durable precisely because they've been tested. Principle 1. Address the real fight, not the stated one. People almost never fight about what they say they're fighting about. They fight about money because they feel disrespected. They fight about deadlines because they feel unrecognized. They fight about process because they feel powerless. The surface issue is just the arena. The real fight is always about something emotional underneath. Elite conflict resolvers never spend all their energy on the surface issue. They ask, what's the unmet need that's generating this conflict? What emotional truth is trying to surface here? When you address that underlying driver, the surface conflict often dissolves without direct confrontation. Principle 2. Tactical empathy. The disarming move. The fastest way to de-escalate conflict is to make the other person feel genuinely heard, not agreed with, not validated in every point. Heard. There's a profound difference. I understand you're frustrated because the timeline shift left your team without adequate preparation time, and that's a legitimate concern. This statement doesn't concede anything. It doesn't admit fault, but it demonstrates that you understand their reality. And the moment someone feels understood, their defensive posture loosens. They shift from fighting to talking, and talking is solvable. Principle 3. Separate the person from the position. In heated conflict, people merge with their positions. To challenge their stance feels like an attack on their identity. To concede feels like personal defeat. Elite conflict resolvers separate the two by asking about interests rather than positions. Not, why are you insisting on that? But help me understand what you're trying to accomplish with that approach. Not, your solution won't work, but what would need to be true for a different solution to serve your needs? These questions move the conversation from defending territory to exploring possibilities, and in that space, creative resolution becomes available. Principle 4. Reframe from battle to problem-solving language shapes reality. The words you choose in conflict literally determine whether the conversation is a competition or a collaboration. You're wrong about this. We're seeing this differently. Let's figure out why. That won't work. Here are the challenges I see with that approach. This is your fault. We have a situation that needs our collective attention. These aren't just softer versions of the same message, they're different messages, ones that invite cooperation instead of triggering defensiveness. Principle 5, the strategic break. Not every conflict should be resolved immediately. Some should be timed. When emotions are running very hot, when someone is in genuine distress, or when your own emotional regulation is being tested, forcing resolution in that moment often produces agreements neither party can actually honor because they were made under duress rather than clarity. This clearly matters to both of us, and I want to give it the attention it deserves. Can we schedule 30 minutes tomorrow morning to work through this properly? This isn't avoidance, it's strategic timing. And the difference between resolving a conflict at peak emotion versus resolved clarity is often the difference between a temporary patch and a genuine solution. Authority building, how to become the person. Every room turns toward without asking. Real authority doesn't come from titles. It doesn't come from volume or seniority or the size of your office. It comes from something far more elemental and far more achievable: demonstrated competence, consistently delivered, communicated with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly how much they know. Here's the core insight. Authority is a perception, and perception is manageable. Your job isn't to be the smartest person in the room. Your job is to be the person the room turns to when the smartest thinking is needed. Strategy 1. Become the irreplaceable source. Authority is built through consistent, generous contribution of real value, not performative expertise, but genuine insight that helps people see things they couldn't see before. Share frameworks that organize complex problems. Offer analysis that explains why things are happening, not just what. Contribute perspectives that reveal patterns others miss. Do this across multiple contexts: in meetings, in written communication, in casual conversations, and you begin to accumulate what might be called intellectual credibility capital. It compounds slowly at first, then rapidly. Strategy 2. Take positions and defend them. Authority figures don't just react to conversations, they shape them, they introduce new frameworks, they challenge conventional wisdom when evidence warrants it, they articulate clear positions and provide the reasoning behind those positions, even when it would be easier to stay safely ambiguous. Write, speak, contribute to important discussions, take stands. When people begin citing your frameworks or referencing your perspectives, you've crossed from participant to authority. That transition doesn't happen through quiet competence alone. It happens when competence is made visible. Strategy 3. Win the hard ones. Nothing builds authority like succeeding where others have failed. Strategically take on the high-visibility challenges that others have avoided. The broken process, the difficult client, the project everyone else said was impossible. When you succeed, your competence becomes undeniable. Choose these opportunities carefully based on genuine preparation and authentic strength, but when the opportunity aligns, take it. Strategy 4. Wear your authority lightly. Here is the paradox that most people miss. The most powerful authority figures are those who don't need to assert their authority. They give credit generously. They acknowledge limitations honestly. They lift others publicly. They remain genuinely curious about domains outside their expertise. This humility doesn't dilute their authority. It amplifies it, because it signals self-security so complete that they have nothing to prove. People follow those they trust, and the surest path to trust is the visible combination of competence and character, knowing your stuff and being the kind of person who uses that knowledge for more than just yourself. Verbal precision. The language patterns that rewire. How others think words are not just communication tools, they are cognitive software. The specific words you choose don't just convey your meaning, they install a framework in the listener's mind that shapes how they process everything that follows. This is why two sentences with the same literal content can produce completely different responses, and why the most influential communicators obsess over word choice in ways that ordinary communicators never consider. Pattern 1. Presupposition, the hidden assumption. The most powerful linguistic influence doesn't happen in the content of a statement. It happens in the assumptions embedded in its structure. If you decide to move forward, asks them to. Decide. When you move forward, assumes they already have. Do you think this approach could work? Invites evaluation. How do you think this approach will work best? Assumes it will work and invites optimization. These shifts don't feel manipulative. They feel like natural conversation, but they install assumptions in the listener's mind that shift the default from uncertain to certain. Pattern 2. Temporal language. How you reference time shapes how people feel about action and delay. The sooner we start, the faster you'll see results, creates positive momentum toward action. Every week we delay, the cost of the problem increases, creates authentic urgency without manufactured pressure. By this time next quarter, anchors future benefit to a specific, imaginable time frame, making it feel real rather than hypothetical. Connect positive outcomes to immediate action and negative consequences to delay. Do this with genuine time dynamics, not invented ones, and urgency becomes clarity rather than pressure. Pattern 3. Emotional word selection. Every word carries emotional weight beyond its literal meaning. Elite communicators choose words for both meanings simultaneously. Cost reduction feels like sacrifice. Efficiency gain feels like progress. Same financial outcome, completely different emotional response. Problem triggers defensiveness. Challenge, or opportunity for improvement, triggers problem-solving mode. Failure creates shame. Learning data creates curiosity. These aren't euphemisms, they're framings, and framing determines whether someone approaches a situation with openness or resistance. Pattern 4. Question. Patterns. That direct thinking questions are the most underestimated tool in the communicator's arsenal because they do something no statement can. They force the listener's brain to process in a specific direction. When you ask, given your goals for this quarter, what would be the impact of completing this versus delaying it? You're not telling them anything. You're causing them to think through your logic and arrive at your conclusion independently. And conclusions that people reach themselves are infinitely more persuasive than conclusions delivered by others. Ask the question. Let their brain do the persuasion work. Pattern 5. Contrast. Framing. The attractiveness of any option is determined almost entirely by what it's being compared to. We could continue with the current system and accept ongoing inefficiency, or we could implement this solution and solve the problem permanently. Both options are presented, but the framing makes one feel obviously superior. This isn't manipulation, it's contextual clarity. You're helping people see the full landscape of their choice, not just the option you're proposing. Persuasion. Mastery, the psychology of making agreement feel inevitable. True persuasion doesn't feel like persuasion, it feels like clarity. The moment someone realizes they've been persuaded, the persuasion has failed, because conscious awareness of the influence process triggers resistance. The highest level of persuasion is when people believe they convinced themselves. And the best persuaders in the world know how to make exactly that happen. The fundamental inversion. Most people lead with facts and hope for emotional buy-in. Elite persuaders do the opposite. They create emotional resonance first. They establish a felt sense of connection, shared understanding, or compelling possibility. And then they provide the logical framework that allows people to feel smart about the emotional decision they've already made. This isn't manipulation. It's alignment with how human beings actually make decisions. Emotionally first, rationally second. Method 1. Desire architecture. Before you try to persuade anyone of anything, spend significant effort understanding what they already want. Not what they say they want, but what their behavior and language reveal they deeply desire. Then position your proposal not as something new they need to want, but as the clearest available path to what they already do. You're not creating desire. You're connecting it to your solution. This is why the best persuaders ask more questions than they make statements. They're mining for the desire that's already there. Method 2. Preemptive objection resolution. The moment someone raises an objection, they're in a partially defensive state, and defensiveness makes persuasion harder. The solution is to address the objections before they form. You might be wondering whether this is realistic to implement quickly, and that's exactly the right question. Here's how we've structured this to make implementation straightforward. This approach demonstrates that you understand their concerns, that you've anticipated their thinking, and that you have prepared answers. All three of these signals build the credibility that makes persuasion possible. Method 3. Commitment, escalation. Big commitments feel risky. Small commitments feel easy. And once you've made a small commitment, the next one, slightly larger, feels psychologically consistent rather than threatening. Structure your persuasion as a sequence of agreements, easy ones first, building gradually toward the central commitment. Each yes makes the next yes feel natural because people have a deep drive to remain consistent with their stated positions. Do you agree this situation needs to be addressed? Do you think this type of solution could work? What would need to happen for us to move forward? This is the architecture of inevitability. Method 4. The objection bridge. When someone objects, most people defend their position. Elite persuaders redirect toward solution thinking. Cost is definitely an important factor. What would the return on this investment need to look like for it to make clear financial sense for you? This move acknowledges their concern, validates their priority, and guides them toward thinking about how it could work rather than whether it could, a subtle but massive shift in mental framing. Digital communication. Excellence. Commanding influence through every screen and platform. The digital age didn't change what persuasion requires. It changed the medium through which it must be delivered, and stripped away many of the natural tools communicators have relied on for centuries. No vocal tone, no body language, no spontaneous rapport, just words, structure, and the quality of your thinking. Elite digital communicators don't treat this as a limitation. They treat it as a clarifying discipline. If your message can influence through a screen, it can influence anywhere. Principle 1. Virtual presence that commands attention. On video calls, most people are forgettable. They sit slightly too far from the camera, in rooms that are too dark, speaking with energy levels that the screen has already absorbed half of. Here's the formula: camera at eye level. This creates psychological equality rather than signaling submission, looking up, or dominance, looking down, lighting that fully illuminates your face, and approximately 20% more energy than feels natural because screens absorb enthusiasm the way carpet absorbs sound. What feels animated on your end reads as engaged on theirs. Principle 2. The written persuasion architecture. Every email, message, or written proposal should follow a clear influence sequence. Grab attention with a specific, immediately relevant opening. Build interest through a compelling question or surprising insight. Create desire by painting a vivid picture of the outcome. Drive action with a specific, concrete next step. Most written communication fails because it leads with context and buries the point. Elite written communication leads with the point, because you cannot assume the reader will stay long enough to discover it. Principle 3. Asynchronous influence. When your message might be read hours or days after you send it, it must carry its own context. Don't assume shared memory. Don't assume continued relevance. Make your message self-contained. Enough background to be clear without enough background to be burdensome. And always end with a specific, directionally guiding question or request. Don't close with, "Let me know your thoughts." Close with, "Which of these two options makes more sense for your timeline?" The former invites silence. The latter invites decision. Principle 4. Digital relationship building. Without the natural bonding that happens through shared physical space, the hallway conversation, the coffee run, the body language that signals genuine warmth, digital relationships require more intentional investment, not less. Start video calls with real, brief personal connection, something beyond, "How are you?" Remember details from previous conversations and reference them. Follow through on small commitments faster than expected. These micro-investments accumulate into the trust that makes all digital influence possible. Presentation domination. How to command any room, from boardrooms to broadcast. Standing in front of a group transforms communication from conversation to experience. Audiences don't just want your information. They want to feel something. They want to leave with their thinking shifted, their possibilities expanded, their energy elevated. Your job isn't just to share what you know. It's to create a moment they remember. Foundation. Narrative architecture. Great presentations are not organized as lists of information. They're architected as journeys. Use the problem agitation solution framework with personal stakes. 1. Problem. Establish a challenge your audience genuinely recognizes. 2. Agitation. Explore its real costs and consequences with specificity and emotional resonance. 3. Solution. Present your path forward as the logical, compelling answer to everything you've agitated. 4. Personal stakes. Show exactly how this affects each individual in the room, not just the organization in the abstract. People don't act on information. They act on feeling, and then justify it with information. Build the feeling first. Vocal command. Your voice is your most powerful control instrument in any presentation. Slow down for critical points. The pause before a key statement creates anticipation. The pause after creates processing time. Speed up slightly during transitions to maintain momentum. Lower your pitch when communicating authority. Raise it when expressing genuine excitement. Use volume variations strategically. Intimate moments require a drop in volume that pulls people in. Powerful moments require a rise that galvanizes. Most importantly, eliminate the nervous filler. The presenter who can hold silence comfortably projects more confidence than the one who fills every pause with "so," or "you know." Audience resistance is your greatest asset. Most presenters fear the skeptic in the room. Elite presenters welcome them. When a difficult question is raised, thank the questioner, genuinely, and use the challenge as an opportunity to demonstrate the depth of your thinking. That's exactly the right question to pressure test this with. Here's how the model holds up under that scenario. Your graceful, confident handling of the hardest challenge in the room will persuade skeptics more effectively than 30 slides of supporting evidence ever could. relationship acceleration, building deep trust in weeks, not years. The conventional wisdom says trust takes time, and it's wrong. Trust doesn't take time. Trust takes quality of interaction, and elite relationship builders know how to create the conditions for genuine trust, authentic connection, and mutual value in a fraction of the time most people require. The three pillars of any meaningful relationship are trust, value, and emotional connection. Most people build these through accumulated time. Masters build them through intentional design. Pillar 1. Rapid trust through strategic vulnerability and demonstrated competence. People grant trust to those who are both capable and genuine. You need to signal both qualities early, not through self-promotion, but through authentic combination. Share a brief relevant story about a mistake and what it taught you. Offer an insight or resource that genuinely helps them with something they're currently navigating. Ask a question that demonstrates you've already thought carefully about their situation, and follow through on even the smallest commitment faster than expected. These behaviors, stacked early, create a trust foundation that would typically take months to build. Pillar 2. Value front-loading. Don't wait to demonstrate your value. Lead with it. Before you ask for anything, find a way to give something that matters to them specifically. An introduction, a resource, a piece of information they've been looking for, a perspective that helps them see their situation more clearly. Give without expectation of immediate return. The reciprocity this creates is far more durable than any impression made through conversation alone. Pillar 3. Emotional resonance. People bond most deeply with those who understand their emotional reality, not just their professional situation, but the feeling of navigating it. When someone shares a frustration, acknowledge the feeling before addressing the fact. When they share excitement, match the energy before adding analysis. Look for the shared experiences, shared challenges, shared values that create natural connection points, and when you find them, name them. That's exactly the situation I was navigating 2 years ago. It's genuinely disorienting. The moment someone feels genuinely understood by you, the relationship fundamentally shifts. You're no longer an acquaintance, you're an ally. The elite communicator's operating system, integrating everything into one. Seamless automatic skill. Everything in this book, every technique, every framework, every principle is a tool, and tools are only as powerful as the system that integrates them. True mastery isn't knowing which tool to use in each moment. It's having developed such deep fluency with all of them that the right approach surfaces automatically, calibrated in real time to the specific human being and situation in front of you. This is what distinguishes the truly elite communicator from someone who has studied communication. Knowledge is conscious. Mastery is reflexive. Integration principle. 1. Situational pattern recognition. Every communication situation has a recognizable architecture. The more patterns you can consciously identify and categorize in real time, the faster your unconscious pattern matching system develops. After every significant communication encounter, take 60 seconds to categorize it. What type of situation was this? What were the key dynamics? What worked? What would I do differently? This deliberate reflection is the accelerant that converts experience into expertise. Integration. Principle 2. Emotional mastery as the foundation. All of the other skills in this book become unavailable when you lose emotional regulation. Techniques require access to the analytical part of your brain, and extreme emotion shuts that part down. The single most important investment you can make in your communication development is in your capacity to maintain strategic calm under genuine pressure. Not the performance of calm, the actual physiological state that keeps your full intelligence available precisely when the stakes are highest. Build this through consistent practice in challenging situations. Gradually expand your comfort zone for high-stakes interactions. Develop physical and mental recovery techniques that you can deploy in real time. Controlled breathing, deliberate physical grounding, cognitive reframing. Integration principle. 3. Value creation as your North Star. Here is the single mental shift that transforms every technique in this book from a manipulation toolkit into a genuine leadership asset. Start every interaction by asking, how can I make this conversation valuable for everyone involved? Not just for you, for everyone. When your communication is genuinely oriented toward creating mutual value, when you actually want the other person to win, not just tolerate their winning as collateral to yours, something fundamental changes in how you show up. Your listening becomes deeper. Your questions become more genuine. Your persuasion becomes more aligned with what people actually need. And people sense this. They cannot always articulate it, but they feel the difference between someone who is using communication techniques and someone who has become a powerful communicator, because the latter is animated by genuine interest in others, not just strategic skill. Integration. Principle 4. The continuous improvement loop. Elite communicators treat every significant interaction as a learning opportunity. After important conversations, they ask, what worked? What missed? What did I learn about this person? What did I learn about myself? Keep a communication journal, not an exhaustive diary, but brief, regular entries that track patterns. Where do you consistently succeed? Where do you consistently get stuck? What types of situations or personalities challenge your composure? What feedback have you received, directly or indirectly, about how you come across? This systematic reflection doesn't just improve your skills, it accelerates that improvement. The communicator who reflects deliberately develops in months what takes others years. Integration, Principle 5. Legacy thinking. Here is the question that elevates communication from a professional skill to a life philosophy. What kind of communicator do you want to be known as? And what will people say you used that communication power for? The most influential communicators in history weren't influential because they were the most technically skilled. They were influential because their technical skill was in service of something larger than themselves, a mission, a movement, a vision for what was possible. Use what you've learned in this book to help people make better decisions. Not just decisions that serve your interests, to resolve conflicts that were making everyone miserable, to build relationships that create genuine, lasting value on both sides, to speak in rooms where important things are being decided, and to say things that need to be said. Communication mastery isn't the destination, it's the vehicle. Where you choose to drive it, that's the part that matters most. Final thoughts. From defense to command. You started this audiobook standing in a defensive position, unsure of what to say, how to say it, when to say it, or whether anyone was really listening. You finish it as something different entirely. You now understand that dominating a conversation has nothing to do with volume or aggression. It's about surgical word choice and mental agility, walking into any room and being the most intellectually present person in it. It's about training the two muscles that determine your communication ceiling, the quick response muscle that generates sharp, confident reactions under pressure, and the analytical muscle that lets you see 3 moves ahead while everyone else is still reacting to the last one. You've gone from defense to offense, from responding to leading, from waiting to be noticed to becoming impossible to ignore. The conversation doesn't start when you open your mouth. It starts the moment you walk into the room. Command it.